Okay, so we're beginning 3 weeks, not consecutive because of Family Day. So 3 weeks with a break in the middle on what we call, I think, the gourmet Shabbos, and gourmet foods on Shabbos, the sushi. I don't know. At this point, it's a requirement every day of the week. But the first topic is sushi and rice paper wraps on Shabbos. So in our Beit Midrash the last few months, we've been learning Hilchos Shabbos. So we figured we'd tackle some of the new-ish, or next week's case, very new, halachic shaylas that come up on Shabbos with regards to food. So the story behind the two foods that we'll talk about tonight was sushi. So I get the daily email from the OU. I don't know if anyone else gets it. It's a nice email, like daily halacha, whatever. They started after Belsky passed away, l'zecher nishmaso. And a few months ago, they had the email that Rebelsky felt, and for reasons we'll see, that making sushi on Shabbos is probably asur mid'oraisa. It's actually one of the malachos. And then my in-laws were at a kiddush where they had a guy making sushi, right? So I said, okay, what? Under the COR. So I emailed Ray Heber, who's always very helpful, to get the COR policy. And as you'll see, the sources look longer than they are, but really you can see once we get to the third page, right, I emailed basically everybody. So I got not everybody, but I got the OU's policy, I got the Star Case policy, I got the COR's policy, I got the Five Towns VOD policy, I got Rav Dov Lior, David Lau, Chief Rabbi of Israel, right? We got a whole collection. I did my research, I got the policies. So what we want to do is explore that. The second question, sushi, rice paper wraps, which I've only recently started seeing. It's those... You've definitely seen it, because down here I see it a lot. It's like those little hors d'oeuvres with like that whitish translucent paper thing that goes around, like thin vegetables cut up like little.
You get it much harder.
Very fancy stuff. Basically, at Michelle's house, like at the Grunbaums, they have this, and I've seen it like dinners in the area. But someone stopped me in the street a few weeks ago on Shabbos and said, I'm having extra guests that I thought. I'm afraid I don't have enough food. Can I make rice paper wraps? And held up a package to me in the middle of the street. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm looking at, but I will get back to you. So now I have gotten back to her with at least the beginnings of an answer. So that's what I want to talk about. Okay, so sushi. What issues could there be in sushi? So,
raw fish.
Well, before we get to the raw fish, okay. So there are many issues with sushi. What issues could there be with making sushi specifically on Shabbos? So the first issue, let's say you wake up Shabbos morning, you want to make sushi, and you haven't prepared anything. Okay, the rice. You better prepare the rice. I can't let you cook the rice. I figured I didn't need to tell you can't cook on Shabbos. Next week we'll get into cooking on Shabbos, but I didn't need to tell you. Fine, but the rice is cooked. Right, whatever, you have a store of it, so you can always make sushi in a moment's notice. So now you want to make sushi. So the first halachic issue you got to deal with is if you totally didn't plan. So now you're going to have to cut the either vegetables or the fish. Now that is going to right off the bat get you into the malacha of toche, the malacha of grinding. Because grinding generally is the problem of taking something big and making it small. Now the question of what are the parameters of that, that's what we've got to figure out. So let's start with vegetables, because vegetables is going to be the primary issue in terms of this malacha. So the Gemara tells you as follows, number one. Amar Papa, Haiman defarim silka chayev mishum tochen. If you cut up, you grind up beets, so then you're liable for having ground. And Amar Rav Menashe, Haiman desolas silse, which Rashi says, eitzim dakim l'hafir kash, and it's not only true of food. You can be liable for grinding even if it's not a food substance. So if you grind up wood as well into small pieces of wood that are going to be kindle wood, right, that you can use for a fire, chayav mishum tochen, that would also be liable. And Shulchan Aruch paskins this way. Number two, that hamachatech yerek dak, if you cut vegetables very thin, chayiv mishum tochen, so then you're liable for grinding. The Rama says, v'huadin lasu lachto grogeres v'charuvim lefnei zgenim. You also can't cut these dates very thin and carobs in front of elderly people. V'davka peiros v'chadoma lezeh aser. But the malacha only applies to fruits, vegetables, and the like, but not things which had already been processed. So bread, right? Bread obviously was made of something which was ground up. It's now been reconstituted into an organic whole. Tochen is on a natural whole. So bread, if you want to make breadcrumbs on Shabbos, that's mutter. You want to, right? Here he's saying for chickens, but whatever, you want to make breadcrumbs, go ahead, make breadcrumbs, you can do that. Because it's already been ground before. Because once you've had tochen once, you can't have it again. Or, as many of the Acharonim say, this isn't really in tochen achar tochen, it's just that tochen is only on a natural whole, and not on a reconstituted one. And then, Shulchan Aruch the Rama introduces a possibility that the only time it is prohibited to grind something is if it is for storage, but if it's going to be for immediate use, it'll be permitted. Let's hold on to that thought, and we'll come back to it in a minute. So, the basic malach of tochen is grinding something up. How small is small, right? Shulchan Aruch describes it dak, very thin. So how thin is thin? So here's the problem, right? The problem, as the Be'er Halacha notes in number 3, is aval b'chatichos gdolos ktsas ein derech tchina. He said, if it's big, what's clear from Shulchan Aruch is that's not called grinding. Akol zeh le'inyan chiyuv. That's only the biblical prohibition of le'inyan iser yesh lizar me'od bazeh. But in terms of what I would tell you not to do, we should be very careful. The kfar kasav b'sefer yareim l'hareim the shir dakusan lo nado lanu. The problem is, how thin is thin? Nobody knows how thin is thin. So, even though you probably aren't going to be chayav misa, you're probably not going to be liable for having cut something unless it's really small. We don't know how much that is. So unless it's pretty big, we tell you to avoid it. And therefore what he suggests is, if you want to cut something up into small pieces, make it into relatively large pieces, and do it near the meal. Again, for reasons we'll see, because the Ramah had said that tochen is more lenient when you get close to the meal. But the first problem is, we don't know how small is. Now, if you've ever made sushi, are the vegetables that you cut for sushi small?
Not a small, like
so,
Israeli salad. It's
well, there's 2 points in time. Because first you use the strips. Then you cut it into the...
Right, so when you're making the roll, but the key is you're making a strip. Is a strip considered small or large?
Not too small. It's bigger than you'd have for a salad, that's for sure.
It's bigger.
So this is Machlokes Moshe and Rishon Zalman Auerbach, because does small require 3-dimensional small or 2-dimensional small? Right? Meaning is a strip considered big? Right, a long strip for a sushi roll, right? It could be, right? It could be several inches long. It's pretty big, but it's very, very, very thin, right? So, is that tochen, or is tochen only when you cut it 3-dimensionally into small pieces? So that's Machlokes Rishon Zalman and Reb Moshe. We look at number 4. Shamati me'agon Rishon Zalman Auerbach zatzal sharamban b'milchamos perak beis gimel debeitza kasav demavakeh eitzim bekubitz chayiv skila mishum tochen. So he says, well, what's the case? The Gemara had talked about cutting wood. So he said, if you cut wood with a like a hatchet, you'd be chayiv. So the first thing you see is that it seems like even if they're not so thin, you're liable. So the first thing that Rishon Zalman says is that tochen is defined as cutting something to the point which it is now functional. Or has a new function, really. So he said, why is it, therefore, that you're allowed to cut up fruits and vegetables into smaller pieces? Because so the reason that large pieces, are permitted, right, or relatively large pieces are permitted, is because you still need to chew them. Right? Tochen is when they're so small that you barely need to chew them. You don't need to chew them at all. That's his chiddush. And wood, once you make it into thin pieces, so now it's already good for the fire. But then he says, but if you were to cut them very thin, and they're long and thin, you would be liable. Right? So Rav Shlomo Zalman's position is that since right, the notion of tochen is to change its function, get it ready for the next stage, and when things are long and thin, you've moved it on in the process. Even though they're not cut very, very small, you've moved it on in the process, and therefore he thinks long and thin is usher. Rav Moshe Feinstein argues, and number 5, he says, "Ha'im isur tchina b'yerakodu davka kishachotech dak dak be'orech uberochav ketchinat kemach." Right, is grinding only when I cut it 3-dimensionally into pieces, like grinding flour. Or even when I do it only, right, in one dimension, or whatever. The way you do with carrots or cucumbers, right? You cut it into strips. I don't know who does those tomatoes. I guess he means slices. I guess slices tomatoes, I'm not really sure. What? No, cubes would be 3-dimensional. He says 2-dimensional. Right? Carrots, people do it all the time, right? But maybe tomatoes. Maybe he means. I guess he just means slices, right? Peppers, you would do it, right? Agvania. I don't know what he. I guess he means slices. I'm not really sure. But he says shuval finis daiti pashut shirak lasus bekanim lasias chilsa v'tocham lasias mikana achas shtayim v'shalosh. Shakavana d'shtayim v'shalosh v'ovi akana shebesha mimena lasus tzarach achilsa shetzarach b'dakus mishum terach tina kazeh shayach sham. So he says, I think, right, that it has to be, right, 2-3 times. Like you have to cut it in multiple directions, right? That's the way you normally do things, like when you're grinding. He said, obviously, this is true because otherwise, if it weren't for ein tochen achar tochen, you wouldn't be able to cut a loaf of bread. You can't cut a fruit into 3 or 4 pieces. What?
Not fair to bring bread in.
Well, I know. He said even, right, he's hedging there. But he says even like a fruit.
Because Bernie said, like we said, you could...
Correct. So he's like, is the only reasoning tochen achar tochen? But then he says it's like a fruit, right? Meaning you take an apple, you cut it into 3 or 4 pieces, that's fine. Right? He's saying tochen means, right, cutting it into, you cut it in multiple directions into tiny little pieces, long strips, that is going to be permitted. Okay, fine. So, first question, halachically, is if you haven't made anything, can you cut the vegetables long and thin? Rav Moshe says, yes. Shlomo Zalman would say, no.
If you're not going to eat it right away.
If you're not going to eat it right away. Heter 2 is the Ramah. So the halacha is as follows. In the context of borer, the Gemara says explicitly that in order to be liable, biblically, you need it to be lo'otzar, it needs to be for storage. But if you do it immediately, right, so borer is mutter if you get 3 things, right? If you do it by hand, you do it immediately, right? And you take the good from the bad and not the bad from the good, right? Then separating is fine. The Rashba, and this is what the Ramah quotes, says that it's true of many, if not all, of the malachos achila, not all, but many of the malachot achila, if you do them immediately before the meal, so then it's permitted. And that's the Ramah paskins. According to that, even if you were going to cut it thin, as long as you do it right before the meal, it would be permitted. But there's a few problems with that. One is it's not clearly paskin that way. The Ramah paskins that way, but if you look at the Mishnah Berurah in number 6, he tells you that v'yesh mefakbin al heter zeh. Right? Many people are hesitant about this psak. V'gam beis Yosef calls of shav mi shemechaven lachol miyad gam ken yizar lachto chatichot gdalos ksas. And beis Yosef says he's only willing to allow you to be lenient if you combine 2 heterim, meaning if you cut it not so small, and if you do it immediately before the meal. So. And that's what he suggests. So therefore, even if you want to rely on this, it wouldn't allow you to cut it as small as you normally would, but maybe you want to make it a less fine sushi, right? You want to cut thicker pieces and do it right before the meal, so then maybe that would be permitted. How close to the meal is right before. Right? This is one of those. All of Hilchos Shabbos is like this, right? Right before the meal. How much is right before? So here I just gave you a few different positions in Achronim from 7 to 11 here. Mishnah Berurah says, Al kol panim asur lasos ad yitzias beis hakneses v'inan samach l'suda mamish. So the Mishnah Berurah says, immediately has to be, he doesn't tell you exactly when, but it has to be after you leave shul. Right? That's how immediate it is, right? So you leave shul whatever time davening finishes, 11:30, right? That's when you can start preparing, right? It can't be that your wife stays home and starts preparing at 9 o'clock, right? 3.5 hours before you're gonna have lunch. You can't do that. And that's the position of the Mishnah Berurah. Moshe Sternbach in 8 says, "V'hinei she'elas ot mamish shal agon v'tzadek Rabbi Dushnitzer leRabbeinu HaChazon Ish Zatzal." So this was asked to the Chazon Ish. V'heishiv lo de'ein shum heter gam lanashim harbe latchil v'fnei chatzi sha'a kodem v'roi lachshosh leser Torah. Chazon Ish said half an hour. Right? It has to be within half an hour. Now, this is problematic, right? Because if it's just your family, you want to make sushi, so maybe you can make the sushi you're going to have within half an hour of the beginning of the meal, have a first course or something, right? Or maybe you think half an hour of the meal, fine. But if you're having a lot of guests, this is very complicated. So does samuch change if you're having 100 people, right? Meaning, is it relative? Is it how much time do you need for the number of people you have?
Also, I have kids at home, so if I have kids that would eat it, do I have to?
Oh, if they're going to eat it now, that'd be fine. No. If they want, right? Presumably, they want to make it for them now. That would be fine. That would be fine. Right? I mean, they want to. If they're going to have,
they can have a piece and then.
Right. I mean, let's say that they'll have whatever they're going to eat for their kiddush and whatever, if they, estimate wrong, whatever it is, right? Or, I mean, to be fair, you don't have to do that, right? Because once you've cut the strip, right, it's the same piece, so presumably be fine at that point. That would presumably be fine. So Moshe Sternbach quotes the Chazon Ish as saying half an hour. And that's what the Rav Binyamin Zilber says as well, that it's half an hour, number 9. The Rav Moshe Feinstein, though, says no. It's a relative. It's relative. Number 10. Ein shazu shel shir shah el azman shaderech uleisha zu shemisader ha'ochlam lasuda v'kodem lazafi l'shah ktana aser. It's when do you normally start preparing for the meal, right? When you start normally preparing for the meal, that is when it's permitted. Before that, it's aser, right? So you can't do it in the morning and then go to shul, right? It would have to be, right? Because that's already there's a gap, right? When do you start getting ready for the meal, right? Putting, getting the salads out of the table, whatever you're doing, that's when you're allowed to do it. And then Rav Moshe Sternbach in 11 notes that the Chazon Ish and the Mishnah Berurah had a machlokes. What happens if you have 100 people at your meal? Right? Is it a relative time? Is it a short amount of time or the minimum amount of time necessary for the number of people you're having at your meal? Right? So he says this is machlokes Chazon Ish and Mishnah Berurah. So he says im yesh harbe levor leklof lesuda kamo b'yeshiva gdola l'sheva brachos. Right? If it's a yeshiva or it's sheva brachos or something like that. Im muter bazel haskol zman rav kodem kevan shenimshach lesuda lok. Are you allowed to start way in advance? V'nir shafilim nakel b'davar. So he said it's a machlokes, but even if you're going to be makil. But even if you want to be makil, the thing which might be usher has to be the last thing you prepare, right? Because you can't say, right, I'll make the sushi and then I'll set the table, right? No, it still has to be as close to possible as the meal, even if you want to be makil. So there's all these different shitot. Again, if you wanted to solve this problem, so you'd say, according to Moshe, it's not a problem because it's long and thin. According to Rosh Zalman, make it a little bit thicker than normal, and then do it samuch l'suda, however you define it, right? And that would be how you would cut up the vegetables. What if it's fish sushi? So then you are saved. You can have, right, fish is easier, because in number 12, Shulchan Aruch tells you that mutter lachtoch basar mevushal tzli dak dak b'sakin, that the prohibition doesn't apply to things which are not gedulei karka. It doesn't apply to meat or fish, right? So if you want fish sushi or you want meat sushi, which is a thing, right? I've discovered this now because when I was at a wedding a few months ago, right? They had like uber fancy, right? The sushi was like I don't know what it was, but it was meat. They had meat pizzas and meat sushis and it was very, very fancy. So that you want to do that, fine. And the Mishnah Berurah tells you why. Because grinding is only a problem with plants, and even though in some circumstances animal life is considered dule karka, in this context it's not, and that's the issue. Okay, that's for grinding. But the truth is, 90% of the time you get the shaila, this has nothing to do with it, because the vegetables are ground before, right? Are cut before, right? You have a box, right? You don't want to be potchking around with the vegetables. They're cut up. The rice is made. You just want to roll it. So while we may be able to solve the tochen problem, now we get to the next problem. Okay, what problem could there be? Right? Once we get past the tochen problem, what halachic problems could there be making sushi? What do you think?
Is there an issue of completing something?
Right, so makav patish, right, completing something. That's possibility one.
The tightness of the roll also?
And therefore would be what?
I just feel like it's a problem.
You're right, and that's what we're going to get to. The answer is, that is the problem, and the reason Rosh Weiss and Rav Belsky both think it's also midaraisa is because they think it's boneh, it's building. We'll see why that could be the case in a minute. The third one, which Rav Weiss will raise and then reject, is tofer, right? Because when you pack it at the end, don't worry, he rejects it, but this is what is brought in the discussion. Okay, those are the malachos that are in play if the vegetables and the rice is already before. Okay, so Rosh Weiss, number 14. He was asked, "Imuter laso sushi b'Shabbos?" Right? Can you make sushi? So he said, "Av she'ein daiti mufleket v'inyan zeli finas daiti yesh lahachmir l'an mekachva v'ertami." I'm not totally sure, but I think it's usher. Let me explain why. So first, we're going to talk about what it's not. Okay. Hine l'chara yesh ladon b'zeh mishum shalosh malachos. There are three potential problems: boneh, tofer, u'makav patish. Right, building, stitching or sewing, and completing an act. Now, let me start with makav patish, what I finished with. This you think it isn't. Why? So he says the Gemara in Shabbos amru b'mishnah kol sheba b'chamen me'erev Shabbos shor noso b'chamen b'Shabbos. Anything that has already been cooked before Shabbos can be reheated. And most things can be rinsed in hot water, right? Except for certain types of salted fish, that pouring hot water on them is the Gemar Malacha, is the end of their Malacha. What does that mean? So this is something which is cooked very easily. Right, it's basically sort of like halacha-theory, right? It's something that gets cooked very quickly, and simply pouring on hot water is going to make it edible. So the Gemara says that's asur. What does it mean when it says it's forbidden because it's gmar malachtan? So rov harishonim pershu dachavana mishum malachas mevashel. Most of the rishonim say it's cooking, because something which is easily cooked, even though the act would not normally cook it, right? Pouring a little hot water shouldn't cook it. If it's something that in fact gets cooked with a little bit of hot water, so then it's asur. But some poskim felt it was makav patish. Dainu makav patish. Ayin sham bilavush primagadim. Mishnah Berurah nakat lekar demachal ein malechas makav patish. The Mishnah Berurah paskins that there is no makav patish by food. K'moshe matzinu dein ibud bochlin, just like there's no tanning by food, vein svia bochlin, and there's no problem coloring food. V'chein legabe melechas makav patish. Now, as he notes, the Mishnah Berurah is mekil, but many poskim are machmir and say there is makav patish by food. But he said still, nira pashu da'afladas machmirim ein zelo mashalohay rayu la'achila metaknu machshiro la'achila. In order for it to be makav patish, you have to be making it edible. Da'avale king gmar malacha v'yeshmo makav patish, because then you're actually doing something. Like this easily cooked fish, which were inedible because of their salt content until you poured on that hot water. And by rinsing them off, so maybe you make them edible by getting rid of the salt. By sushi, you're just attaching a bunch of things, and therefore it's not makav patish, it's fine. Umishum kach ein lachshos meleches makav patish. The second possibility, stitching, right, sewing. He says, okay, this I'll just summarize outside. He said, it's not. It's not sewing. And he said, right, he assumes the reason this is true is because there really isn't tefira by food, because sewing is only asur if it's meant to last. This isn't meant to last, right? You make it, you eat it, we're done, right? And he said, besides, you're not really attaching it, right? It's just like a little bit of moisture and a little bit of stickiness in the right, a little bit of starch, right? That's not enough for it to be, right? You can unroll it very easily. It's not significant enough, and therefore he says, that's not the problem. What is the problem? Boneh. Why boneh? How is it building? Right? Why is making a sushi roll building? I remember the first time I said this to someone, right? When I was learning the sugi, he just looked at me incredulously. I get that, but this is where it comes from. The Gemara in Shabbos, number 15, tells you that Tana Rabbanan, Hachole v'machabetz v'magaben kegogeretz. If you, right, if you milk, you make butter, you make, right, cheese, you're chayev. Why? Now, the Gemara then gets into machlokas. Elazar says it is derabanan. It's deraisa. The Chum says derabanan. Why? So the Gemara at the end, after the ellipse, it says megaben chayev mishum boneh. And making cheese, you're liable for boneh. Why does that make sense? Right? Why does it make sense that making cheese is boneh? So, in order to understand that, you need to understand a different issue in boneh. The Gemara says in several places, in Shabbos and Beitza and other places, that there's a halacha called ein binyan b'kelim. Right? That making that once you have vessels, there's no boneh. So what happens if you make a new vessel, right? You actually build a new kli. Is that asur on Shabbos? So the answer is yes, it's obviously asur on Shabbos, but why is it asur? So Rashi says it's asur because of makav patish. If you make a new kli, you make a cup, you make a bowl on Shabbos, it's makav patish because you made something new. But it's not boneh. Boneh only is by buildings, right? You need to build, right, in the ground, in a building, that's it. But Rov Rishonim think it's not true. Rov Rishonim say that when we say there's no binyan by kelim, that's only by things that are, Tosfos says only things which you don't have to screw in tightly, but if you're screwing it in tightly, it's boneh. Or the way the Chachmei Sfard say it, like the Rashba in 16, they say no. Binyan b'kelim, there's no binyan b'kelim if it's reassembly. Reassembly is permitted on Shabbos. But making something new, what they call not boneh b'kelim, but ose kelim, right? Making something new.
Like making the mold?
Right, making a full kli from start to end, right, from start to finish, that is boneh. That's the Rashba, right? The Rashba says it in 16. He said, "V'yesh mefarshim the amrina ein binyan nistira bekelim hani nili bekli shenit barek." Right? We only say there's no problem with binyan bekelim by something that fell apart and you're reassembling it. Kagon menorah shel chuliot, like a snap together a lamp. Ukadisharu beisil is gofin a menorah biyom tov. Avalas is kli lechad chila, but to make a new vessel ein lecha binyan gadol mizeh. Obviously, that's building. Right? It's not called assembly; it's called creating. He said that is why the megaben chayv mishum boneh, that making cheese is boneh. If there's no building by vessels, how could there be building by food? When you make something from scratch and you make something new, which is what you do with cheese, you take the curds and the whey and whatever and you make it into something new, so that's boneh, and that's why making cheese is boneh. The Rambam in 17 tells you, "V'im gavno, if you make cheese, v'aseu gvina chay mishum boneh." Why? Shekol ha'mekabetz chelek el chelek v'davak hakol ad sheyasu guf echad harei dome libinyan. Every time you assemble things, you attach pieces to each other until they become one entity. That's similar to boneh, and therefore it is a tolada of boneh, meaning it's d'oraisa. It's not the av, but it is a d'oraisa of boneh. Now, the Rambam seems to think that making cheese is de'oraisa, but as we saw in the Gemara, that seems to be machlokas Rabbi Elazar and the Chachamim. The Chachamim seem to hold d'Rabbanan. The Aruch HaShulchan notes that in 18, that the Yeshom Zeu Rak Mid'Rabbanan, that many Rishonim hold that assembly by foods is only Rabbanan. Ve'ezeh dimyonu megabin lebonim b'shnei shekol mekabetz chelik al chelik v'akol ad sheyasku v'echad Reza told us bonem. So the Rambam thinks that making cheese, right, assembling cheese is d'oraisa. The Aruch HaShulchan notes that many Rishonim think it's asur, but it's only mid'Rabbanan. And the Even Azil, based on this Rambam in 19, sets his principle out that any time you assemble different things and you attach them to each other, right, that is boneh. Whether it's food, whether it's kalim, it doesn't matter. So therefore, you see this principle that assembling, putting pieces together and attaching them together into something new is boneh, even by food, either on a biblical level or on a rabbinical level, or either d'oraisa according to the Rambam or d'Rabbanan according to many other Rishonim. There is, however, another position, and that is the position of the Magen Avraham. So in 20, Shulchan Aruch says as follows: Hamekabetz dveila v'aseh mimenu igul. If you take dates, right, figs rather. Right, so they used to have, and now it's become, right, it's in vogue again, right? There was an article in the New York Times about that. This is the new in food, are like date and fig bars, right? Not like fig Newtons, but like you just take dates and figs and you press them together until they make this mush, right? And you eat it, right? It's very sweet, very high calories, high energy, but all natural sugars. That's dveila. So Shulchan Aruch says that if you do that, or you collect figs and you put them on a rope and attach them together, it's a tolada of ma'amer, of collecting, right, of collecting produce in the field. So the Magen Avraham says, why is it ma'amer? Why don't you say that it's boneh? Right? How is stuffing dates together into a date pie, right, a date block, any different than cheese, where you push the curds together to make cheese? So if you look at the bolded part, he says, "V'tzarach lomar delo mikri boneh ela kishemechavein liaposo lashvoso." Magen Avraham says, simple assembly of foods is not going to be asur mishum boneh, only if you mean to make it in a nice shape. Right? So when you stick the dates together, you don't care how it comes out. Cheese, he thinks you're only chayav if you make it into a nice block. You're making it you're making it look nice. The Chayadim paskin is this way, and he says, "I feel b'davar machal shayach binyan gegon magabe gvina v'chayot sebo v'lav dafka gvina." And then in 23 he explains to you that it is only boneh if you do two things, which it, right, it says, right, making cheese is also because you're putting the pieces together. Right, you need two things: a nice shape and assembly of pieces. Right, then it is going to be boneh, according to the Rambam d'oraisa, according to many Rishonim d'Rabbanan. So now Rav Asher Weiss, right, looks at sushi and he says, well, what are you doing in sushi? Right? So he said, well, you're doing two things. You're pushing pieces together, right? The rice is sticky rice, right? And you put the vegetables in, and you put the seaweed, and you, right, tightly push them together until they become, right? It's not sushi salad, right? Sushi salad, you just take all the ingredients and you pile them on top of each other. That's fine, right? That's totally fine. But here you're doing it, and it's meant to look good. It's a roll, right? It's artistically done in the middle, and so that you can cut it into pieces so that it looks nice. It's the Chai Adam's boneh. It's both factors. It's meant to look aesthetically nice, and it is meant to combine pieces into a new whole. And therefore, he says. Okay, so I'll skip 24. 24 is not about sushi. This was an earlier tshuva, not a tshuva. This is an article he wrote in Shabbos where he argues that a similar case would be making a layer cake, right? A layer cake would be also on Shabbos, right? Where you take a what?
Oh, if you have the
right, you already have the cake, right? And then you cut it, right? You cut a slice and you put cream on top, and you cut a slice and you put cream on top, and you make it a 7-layer cake. It says that's exactly megabe, right? It's exactly the same thing. Chelek al chelek, to make it artistically nice. So he says that's asur. But in 25, he, right? Look, I gave it to you. I don't have to read it inside. But he says, since you want two things, you're connecting pieces, and you can see the bolded stuff. He's making a davar chadash. You're making something new, meaning sushi. Therefore, it is asur. And he basically takes the Magen Avram and the Chai Adam. Now, you look 4 lines from the bottom. He says, I'm not 5 lines actually from the bottom. He says, look, he said, I'm not convinced the Magen Avram is correct, right? I'm not convinced he's right. But in the end of the day, that's how I paskin, right? I don't have a choice. He said, I'm not convinced that their analysis in the sugya is correct. But if we paskin the Magen Avram, the Chai Adam, then sushi would be asur. And he says, "Oh, the gamba sushi domad davar k'tzat l'megabein ve'in kan kibbutz v'chibur bilvad el machal chadash v'shem chadash." And he said, at some level, it is similar to cheese because you're connecting things and you're making something new. He says, He says, on the other hand, I understand why you would challenge me, which is cheese actually makes a new whole, right? You can't disassemble cheese. Once it's made, it's made. Sushi, you can unroll it, you can take off the rice, right? It's a bit difficult, but it's not a new unit in the way cheese is. So he said, I'm not 100% sure. And therefore he says, the last line, it's similar, I'm not sure. Therefore, he hedges. He says, I'm not 100% sure. Right? It might be that this isn't as connected as cheese, and therefore he's not 100% sure that you're chayav misa. Right? There's this, Rabbi Yashiv has this great line in one of his pieces about cooking. Right? He says it's definitely asur to do such and such, meaning I'm convinced that it's asur enough that I would tell you not to do it, but come ask me again before you give someone skila. Right? That's his formulation. So he says, I'm not sure. We'll see next week in Suvi that Rav Asher Weiss tells you there also his principle is that whenever he's not sure on Shabbos by fancy foods, he always paskins l'chorma because it's a big deal. So you won't have sushi on Shabbos. What's the big deal? Right? It's a chashis or doraisa. It's not worth the fancy food. That's his position. Unless he's convinced it's mutter, he'll always be otzer. That's what he tells you his shita is. So he thinks it's doraisa. And if you look at 26, this was the OU's Halacha Yomis email on February 12th, 2016. So I guess I didn't see it recently. I saw it recently, but it didn't actually come out. Is it permissible to make sushi on Shabbos? Is it muktzah? So Shulchan Aruch writes that unsalted raw fish is muktzah because it serves no purpose on Shabbos. However, in our days, if one has cuts of raw fish that are edible as sushi, then they're not muktzah. So he said maybe you think it's muktzah because raw fish is normally muktzah. So that's obviously wrong because raw fish is only muktzah because people used to not eat raw fish. If you eat raw fish, it's not muktzah. Fine. However, Rav Belsky questioned whether one may make sushi on Shabbos because the Chai Adam writes that the malacha of bona applies to food as well, and that attaching foods together to produce a desired picture or a shape is included in this prohibition. Since shaping sushi might be included in the prohibition, Rav Belsky recommended that one should not make sushi on Shabbos with the intent of making a specific design or pattern, meaning don't make sushi. Right? He said it's de'oraisa.
He said not to make a specific designer pattern.
Well, that's what sushi is. But we'll see his position clearer in just a minute. We're going to come back to his position in just 15 seconds. So both Rav Asher Weiss and Rav Belsky are choshesh that it's an isser de'oraisa. Now, how did this whole thing come about? Who was the first person to ask the shaila? So as far as I can tell, the first person to ask the shaila was Rabbi Ari Zatz. Rabbi Ari Zatz is teaches in YU. He's a rabbi in Teaneck. He's our first cousin by marriage, his brother. I know Toronto people are good at figuring this out, but that's how we're sort of related, Toronto related. So I was listening to a shir where he said, "How did this come about?" He wrote an article in the Journal of Halacha and Contemporary Society, And then he sent his article to Rav Asher Weiss, and Rav Asher Weiss responded with a tshuva, and that's how we got the tshuva. Okay. So we skip to 28 for a minute. Right, he basically sets up what we already said, right, that according to Rajba, you could argue that it's a new it's a new separate food, maybe, but then he says, but what's the difference between, right, the main question, second paragraph, is what difference is there between salad, sandwiches, wraps in the case of sushi? So he said the primary differences seem to be A, intending to build a precise or attractive product, and B, whether the separate parts have truly been combined into a larger unit. In the case of a salad, sandwich, or wrap, generally speaking, one's intention is not to make either a very precise product or to design it in a very attractive way. Certainly the presentation of food is an important aspect of the culinary experience, but it does not seem to involve the same concern for precise beauty as sushi does. Furthermore, even if one is concerned with the precise aesthetic appeal of a salad, sandwich, or wrap, these items do not seem to reach the same level of being bound into one unit as does sushi, right? So this is his argument. The reason, right, because you could have just countered, why is this different than a sandwich, which is obviously mutter? He said, because it makes a more organic unit. Then he gives you a practical difference, right? The basic practical difference is as follows. A sandwich, if you want it to all come with you when you eat, right, you better pick it up from the bottom, right? You pick up the top, the middle will fall off, right? Will fall down. By sushi, right, once it's sushi, you just pick it up, right? You see that at some level it is a new object. However, he suggests that if this is the case, there might be a difference between a layperson making sushi, which isn't so nice and isn't so, sort of falls apart, and professional sushi, which that's what he suggested. Okay, so we saw the Rav Asher Weiss and Rav Belsker Machmir. So why might it be mutter? So I gave you in 29 and 30 that both Rav Dov Lior and Rav David Lau both think it's mutter. Right? Rav Dov Lior is a prominent posek in the religious Zionist community. Rav David Lau is chief rabbi of Israel. Rav Dov Lior says, "Im kol masher tzichim lasod galgel et hadag ba'orez en kan shum ba'ya. Kshem shemut lachin salat la'arbev batzel b'gvina." Right? He says, I don't see this. Right? Rolling vegetables and rice is like making a salad. He doesn't buy that this is making a new entity. He says, nah, it's mutter. Rav Dov Lior, Rav David Lau says, "L'chora mecheven shekol shenotar rak gil gulam yachad." All that's left, if you want to make sushi, is to roll it up. K'akol farochan merosh lo tzricha liod baya. There is no problem, and this is the position I gave you. I just noted it for you in 33 that I emailed the Star K, and Rav Moshe Heineman's position is that making sushi on Shabbos is mutter, and therefore in the Star K they are mekil lechatchila. However, both the OU and the Five Towns Vod follow the OU on this, and the COR have a middle position, and they hedge a bit here. And here's the two hedging we got. Okay? So Ray Heber told me that Ray Miller, number 31, said it's mutter al yidei achim. If the sushi guy making the sushi is not Jewish. What? What?
Harder to do that.
Harder to do in Israel for sure. And he says why. Look at 31. This is his email to me. He said, I believe the main reason is because it doesn't become one like cheese. It falls apart easily. Meaning, right, I followed up with him. I said, is it mutter because, Rabbi Zatz, in 32, I note this for you, in his footnote says that we noted before that according to the Aruch HaShulchan, right, for the Rambam making cheese is d'oraisa. But for Rov Rishonim, it might be d'Rabbanan. And the halacha is that under certain circumstances, Amir l'Nachri, on a d'Rabbanan, l'tzorach mitzvah, is mutter. So he says that if you think it's only d'Rabbanan, so then having a non-Jew do it might be mutter. If you think that having it for your Shabbos meal is enough of a mitzvah, so maybe be mutter. So Ray Heber told me that's not why Rabbi Miller is mekil. He thinks the reason is because he doesn't really think it's usher at all. He thinks that this isn't like cheese, right? Like Rav Dov Lior, right? Rav David Lau. He thinks it's just rolling. So why does he require a guy to hedge, right? Because worse comes to worse, it's a derabanan. He's not willing to risk the daraisa, so he wouldn't let a Jew do it. But if a non-Jew does it, what's the worst that'll happen at the end of the day? It'll be an isur derabanan of Amir l'Nachri. And therefore, the COR's official policy is you're allowed to have sushi made at a simcha if, right, a sushi stand at a simcha on Shabbos if the guy making the sushi is not Jewish.
But he's also getting on the other side that even if it is bonus, and if you hold it as bonus derabanan,
Correct, but so I asked him which one does he want. So that's why I asked for which one is it?
Yeah.
Right? No, Arizat's notes. Right? Arizat's notes in his footnote that if you hold like the Aruch HaShulchan, you could think it's vaday bona and still come up with a heter. Right? You'd say it's bona derabanan al yidei mir l'nachri might be mutter, but Ray Miller doesn't think that. Ray Miller just thinks it's probably mutter, but I'll hedge. Right? I won't have a Jew do it just in case, but fine. That's a bit of a middle position. The OU's position is even more complicated to figure out. This is 27. This is what I got. I emailed the Weber Rebbe, right? That's the OU's Ask the Rabbi. This is what they sent me. The Chai Adam writes, this is 27. The Chai Adam writes, the Isser Bona can apply to foods. If one sticks together foods to make shapes, right, so Reb Belsky Zatzal was not sure if sushi was included in this. Therefore, he would not say that it's usher to have a non-Jew make sushi, but he was against the idea of sushi stations. He held it was wrong, and he told us to advise caterers that it was not lechatchila to ask a non-Jew to make sushi on Shabbos, but he would not stop a caterer if they insisted.
I'm pretty sure we've had it here on Shabbos.
Yeah.
No, I told you, that's the CR's policy, is that to allow a guy to do it. The OU's policy is to discourage, right? The OU's policy. So the CR, star K, is Mekel Lechatchila. The COR is Mekel Lechatchila Yidei Goy, because Miller thinks it's probably mutter, but he hedges and says have a guy do it. The OU and the Five Towns Vaad, their policy is discourage the caterer, but if you can't discourage him, then you should have a non-Jew do it. And then they asked Rebelsky why having a non-Jew make sushi is worse than letting children play with Lego, which the minhag is to allow. And he says the difference is that children play for themselves, but one is asking the non-Jew to do it for you. So this is a shayla of amir la'akum. Okay, that's the position. So we get three positions, however you want to look at it. Star K, based like Rav David Lau, Rav Dov Lior. This is not megabein, it's mutter. What?
What's Lego?
Because Lego, according to some poskim, might be bona, and therefore we allow kids to do it because they're doing it for themselves. What?
We don't do it as adults.
So that's how many poskim sort of hedge.
Oh.
Not everyone poskim so. Some people think it's mutter lechatchila. He's just saying that according to the people who think that bona might be us, or why do we let kids do it, but you wouldn't allow a guy to make sushi because the guy is doing it for you, the kids are doing it for themselves, and they're both not chayv and Shabbos yet.
Sushi stations doesn't really mean anything here, right?
What?
He says he discourages sushi stations.
He means having someone make sushi for you. Yeah, that's all he means. So, la halacha, what do you get? Again, the star case, David Lau, Rav Dov Lior say, making sushi is not bona, right? It's not one unit, it's mutter, period, end of story. The Rav Asher Weiss says, it's probably Asher Midaraisa, Asher, don't do it, right? The COR and the OU both have these middle positions, right? Right, Miller, and the COR's policy is that it's probably mutter, but we hedge and therefore have a guy do it. The OU's policy in the Five Towns Vod is to discourage it, but if you can't discourage it, then to allow it a guy, which is okay. I don't know where all the policies come from, but that's what they told me. I copied it, so you couldn't challenge me. That's what they said. Fine. In 34, I just note that Ray Leibowitz quotes that he asked both Ray Willig and Ray Schechter, and they both felt it was Asher Midarabanan. But Ray Willig was not willing to be makil because this is very Ray Willig, right? He said, "What is this OU's policy that it's mutter if it's a shazatchak?" He's like, "There's no such thing as a shazatchak. You need sushi." Like he just doesn't understand it. So he says maybe it's usher midarabanan, but there's no such thing as a pressure. You need sushi. You don't need sushi. So he says it's usher. Okay, fine. Kachu pasak. Last 8 minutes we have. Fine. What about rice paper wrap? So again. What is a rice paper wrap? So, it's this, rice paper is basically this starchy paper. It's usually made of rice, maybe tapioca flour. It's made in Vietnam usually. It's made into a circle. When it's fresh, it's soft. It's very thin, soft. You can eat it, you can dip it, you can wrap it, whatever. To ship it, they dry it out. And it's brittle, right? It'll break if you touch it. So what you have to do is you have to soak it. When you soak it, it becomes soft and translucent, and then you can wrap like vegetables. And you make like fancy vegetable wraps with it. So in terms of cutting the vegetables, we've dealt with that. That was the tochen issue. What potential issue would there be by rice paper? So potential issue by rice paper is what we mentioned before is makab patish ba'ochlen, right? Because you're taking something which is unusable, right? And you're making it usable. So is that a problem? So very quickly, is there such a thing as makab patish ba'ochlen? So the Yerushalmi in number 35 says absolutely yes. right? There is, right? It has a discussion there of processing garlic and goes through different stages and says at the end, Gmar malach mishum makav patish. So the Yerushalmi paskins that it is. What about the Bavli? So we actually saw this in Rav Asher Weiss, but the Gemara in 36 tells you that if you have fish which is salted and unedible until you rinse it, so then rinsing it is Gmar malachtan. So why is that true? So Rov Rishonim say what Rashi says in 37, that we're talking about rinsing this fish with hot water. And the issue here is bishul, because it's something which is called kalei habishul. It's easily cooked, and therefore merely pouring on hot water is going to be asur because it's bishul. The Mordechai in 38 tells you that it is, that this is asur even with cold water, because you're softening it, and zeu gmar malachto, which sounds like it is makav patish. How do we paskin? So the truth is, the simple read is you look at Shulchan Aruch in 39. Shulchan Aruch says, "Im hu davar yavesh l'nisbashal mifnei Shabbos." If you have something dry which wasn't cooked before Shabbos, ein sharnoso b'chamin b'Shabbos, you aren't allowed to pour hot water on it on Shabbos. Aval. But you could merely rinse it with a, right? You can't soak it, but you could rinse it. Except for this fish, which only needs a little bit of cooking, and therefore pouring hot water will finish the cooking into asur. So Shulchan Aruch says, why is it asur to pour water on this fish? Because of bishul. But the Ramah says, "V'hu adin kol davar kasher she'ein roy lechol klal below shriya the asur l'shoso b'Shabbos devig mar malacha." Anything which is hard and is inedible without soaking, it's asur to soak on Shabbos because of gmar malacha. So what does it sound like? The Ramah paskins like the Mordechai that softening something to make it edible is makav patish b'ochel, and that's what it sounds like. And the Pri Megadim and the Levush. Right, I won't read it inside now. The Pri Megadim and Levush both say, yeah, we paskin. There's makav patish b'ochlin. Mishnah Brura in 41 says no, it can't be, because Rov Rishonim think that the reason you're liable in the case of the fish is because of bishul, not makav patish. But the problem is that the Be'er Halacha is very right. It's hard to paskin like the Be'er Halacha for two reasons. One is the Ramah seems to say explicitly yesh makav patish b'ochlin, and the second is lo re'inu ein araya, meaning you can't tell me that because in one case, which might be bishul, might be makav patish, the Rishonim interpret it as if it were makav patish, as bishul, then that means they'll never hold it's makav patish. That doesn't mean there's never makav patish. It might just mean that case isn't makav patish. But the Ramah himself says that softening something to make it edible is makav patish be'ochlin. That's what he says. Or seems to say. And if you look at 42, and I'm just going to say it outside, but the Aruch HaShulchan paskins that way as well. He said this simple pshat in the Ramah is that yesh makav patish be'ochlin. And the truth is, the Vayan Yosef I gave you in 45 says that at some level this is logical, because we already spent the whole time talking about boneh b'ochlin. If you can have boneh b'ochlin, why shouldn't you have makav patish b'ochlin? I mean, why should, right, if food isn't excluded from building, why should it be excluded from makav patish? Additionally, there's two ways of understanding, even if you want to say that there's no makav patish b'ochlin, there's two ways of saying that. One is to say that making something edible on Shabbos isn't makav patish. The second way of saying it is that food can't have makav patish done to it. But which of the, right, Shlomo Zalman notes these, or seems to say something like this in 43.
You're not calling it food when you started off with this brutal...
So, exactly. Now, why would I say that probably ein makav patish b'ochlin, to the extent that it means anything, means that that making something edible isn't makav patish? Because if you look at 44, the Rambam says that giving trumos or maestros on Shabbos is mitakein. Right, so the Minchas Chinuch and the Imak Halacha both point out that means the Rambam thinks that at least at a derabanan level, Right? Metaken mana is Maga Padish derabanan. But that means that he thinks that you can have Maga Padish on food. You'll tell me, Ein Maga Padish ba'ochlin. No, Ein Maga Padish ba'ochlin, meaning there's no Maga Padish to make something edible. But when I'm being mafresh trumos and maestros, I'm fixing it, not in edibility, I'm fixing it halachically, and therefore it looks like fixing. Meaning, just because something's food doesn't mean it can't be makah patish. So, my big suffix on rice paper, right, and I still don't have milchas nefesh on it, I'm not really sure, is on the one hand, right, making it soft and usable might be makah patish because we might paskin like the Ramah, as the Aruch HaShulchan understands it, that there's such a thing as makah patish ba'ochlin. Even if you paskin like the Mishnah Berurah, that ain't makah patish ba'ochlin, that only may mean that making something edible is not makah patish. But here, why are you softening it? Not to make it edible. It's edible. You can bite into it. It'll be fine. You're making it into a tool. You're making it usable to roll, right? So that might be different. It might be makah patish. I'm still misopik about this. I asked a bunch of people. I only got one answer. The one answer I did get, and that's in 46, was from Ray Miller. He answered my shaila from Toronto, number 1603. Now my claim to fame, right, is Rish Shlomo Miller says no, it's mutter for two reasons. And this, again, I'm still asking around, but it's a compelling argument. He says as follows: it's mutter for two reasons. One is the Mishnah Berurah says ein makah patish ba'ochlin. Now he said, even though he recognizes that there are many poskim who argue on that, he said this isn't makah patish for a different reason, and that's that it's reversible, right? Because think about it: you made it soft, and then you let it dry out, and now you soak it to make it usable. But if you left it to dry, it would dry it again, and you do it again. And therefore, he says if you mitzdarif both, namely the Mishnah Berurah that there's no makah patish by food, and two, this probably isn't makah patish because it's reversible. He thinks bigadol, softening it, right, soaking it and softening it to make it into roll is mutter because it's not going to be makah patish based on those two sniffim together, and that's what he writes here in 46. So at the moment, the only person who's weighed in definitively on it that I could find was Ray Miller in response to me, and he said it was mutter. When I talked to one of the Rosh Yeshiva at YU, he told me he's still misupik about it and asked me to come back to him if I come up with anything. So over, this is all I have, but that's the potential issues, and at the moment it stands the only posek I know of who answered the question thought it was mutter, and again, according to Mishnah Berurah, it's vadai mutter, and with the edged sniff that it's reversible, that does seem to make it mutter. The only concern there is not quickly reversible. It takes about 3 days in the hot sun to really, really dry out, so yesh ladun, but that's where the issue stands as far as I know. Anyone listening who wants to give me other answers out there in the world of YU Torah, bisimcha, I'm waiting for more, but that's where it stands for now.